if my logic is correct here, that means they're waiting for another player who they drafted to come up and seize the job, the role of captain on this team. I think that can be either Matty Beniers or Shane Wright. But if I had to pick, I'm leaning towards Shane Wright. I'm saying that I think they're going to wait in a few years, name Shane Wright captain.
You're now listening to the Boys in the Booth podcast with your hosts, Harper Cody, Chad Melbourne, and Casey Abrams.
That's a big one.
Yeah!
Good evening and welcome to episode 187 of the Boys in the Booth podcast. No Abrams for this one. It's just Cody and Melbourne. It's a Halloween edition of the pod, so happy Halloween from us to you, from our family to yours. And Chad, we all got to see each other over the weekend, of course, at Mira's costume party there. That was a lot of fun. And now we're doing episode 187 here on Halloween. How you doing, man?
Yeah, doing well. What a crazy weekend it was. I love Halloween. It's one of the best weekends of the year, if I'm being completely honest. Paige and I hosted a party. We did Barbie and Ken themed, so that was fun on the Friday. And then on the Saturday, we booked it back to Mira's to have the party out in the Brockville area, so that was nice too. Reused the same costume and would have reused the same costume right now on the show if I still had it with me, but I don't. So that's why I'm dressed as, if you couldn't guess, Cillian Murphy from Peaky Blinders. I'm Thomas Shelby. That's who I am. I threw this together. I had this outfit from a few years ago, and surprisingly, it still fits. So, I mean, aside from the hat, though, this is killing my brain. By the end of this, I'm going to be just squished. So if I have any bad takes on this episode, I have a reason for it. But yeah, great weekend overall. How you doing, Harp?
I'm good, man. Yeah, great weekend. Halloween is always so much fun. We're obviously a little too old for the trick-or-treating part of it nowadays, but we get to do the costume parties, and it's a great excuse just to get everybody together. And there were some really great costumes this weekend. Obviously, Adam James, our good buddy there, here on the pod. He and I were Corey and Trevor from Trailer Park Boys, and that was a lot of fun. Good. And now I've got my nerd costume on here for this episode, and you're doing the Thomas Shelby Peaky Blinders thing, so that's great.
Yeah, a couple bow ties could go either way for both of us. Could be in Peaky Blinders, could be a couple of nerds. I mean, I feel like I talk more stats, so maybe we could have even switched.
Hey, exactly. All right, man. Before we get into the meat and potatoes of this episode, you have another little game to kick us off.
Yes, and I will say before we get into this game, we've been recommended a few other games, most notably by our good buddy and former guest of the show, Corey Morrell. We will eventually get to that game because he really, really wants to hear it. So, Corey, if you're in your work truck right now listening to this, it will not be the game that you're expecting, but we hope you enjoy it anyways, and we'll get working on your game. So,
yeah, we will.
The game for this week is pretty simple. All you're going to have to do, Harper, is tell me a player who wore the jersey number that I tell you.
Okay.
The trick is it has to be a current player.
Okay.
And the other trick is you only have 30 seconds to do it. So you tell me when to start the timer, and I'll give you your first number, okay?
Okay.
And I'm hoping that within the 30 seconds you can get more than 10, okay? I think the over-under is 9.5. I feel like maybe I'll go with the under on it, but let's hope you can get the over here.
All right, let's see what this number is. Fire away.
Okay, your first number, and again, remember, current players, your first number is number 1. The time has started.
Number 1, okay. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen.
Yep, that's good. Number 3.
Number 3.
10 seconds.
Oh, number 3. Shoot.
You can skip.
Number 3. We'll skip that one.
Number 6. 10 seconds left.
Number 6. Jacob Chikrin.
That's right. Number 12. 5 seconds.
Number 12. Trevor Moore.
Number 13.
13.
That's
Gabe
30
Vilardi?
seconds.
Ah.
I'll give it to you though. I'll give it to you. So
Okay.
you did get the under, but you did a better job than
Okay.
honestly I probably would have done, because I only know Maple Leafs jersey numbers. But
Now, well, speaking of that, number 3, I could have got John Klingberg, couldn't I?
that's right. And
Right.
maybe a better defenseman this season anyways, who doesn't play for the Maple Leafs anymore. Do you know where I'm going with this one?
Who doesn't play for the Maple Leafs anymore?
Same
Number
division.
3.
Really great plus minus.
Oh, geez, Justin Hall.
Justin Hall
Oh, my
also
goodness.
wears
Yes.
number 3. I had some tricky ones in there for you. I was going to ask you
did.
this one as well, though, which is maybe the trickiest of the bunch. Name a number 83 currently in the NHL. There's only one.
Ooh. A number 83. That is really tough.
There's only one active player who wears the number 83. That's why it is probably the toughest number to guess.
Can you give me a hint, like what division or something like that?
Yeah, so he has played in
You know what? I know it. You don't even have to go. Matt Nieto.
That's right.
Yes,
number 83.
there we go. All right.
Good stuff. I was going to say he was known for playing in the Pacific Division because he played
Right.
with San Jose for a long time. But
Yeah.
So there
Yeah.
you go.
Cool. Cool.
Okay, that wraps it up. That wraps up the game.
All right. Awesome. I like that one. We're gonna have to do that one again when it's all 3 of us here on the pod.
Yes, and you'll have to try to beat your high score of.
Yes.
I believe you got 5 there. So I think you
Yes.
could do much better. It's just first time nerves. That's what it is.
Yes, for sure. All right, that's good stuff, man. And we're just gonna keep this one short and sweet. Obviously, it's Halloween, and we don't want to take up too much of your time. So we're just gonna talk about the 5 teams who currently have no captain right now in the NHL. So there are 5 teams, like we said: Anaheim, Arizona, Chicago, Philly, and Seattle. And we'll just talk about who should be the next guys to wear the C's for those franchises. So let's start. We'll go in alphabetical order, Chad, with the Anaheim Ducks. Take it away.
So I'll start off by saying the next captain of the Anaheim Ducks, actually the next captain for a few of these teams, have some pretty big shoes to fill. But for Anaheim specifically, their last captain was Ryan Getzlaf back in 21-22. Their current alternate captains are Cam Fowler, who is the longest serving since 2020-21.
Yep.
Adam Henrique, Mason McTavish as of this year, and Troy Terry. Those 4 are serving as their alternate captains. For me, I think the no-brainer pick for next captain of the Anaheim Ducks is Mason McTavish, and I have a few reasons for it. And you know what? Maybe I should say maybe it's not a no-brainer, because there are some other really good players on this team who have been there for a long time. But I think it was at least a no-brainer for me that Mason McTavish was or should be the next captain. He's arrived points-wise this season, and he has told everybody in the NHL that he's here to play, and we've seen that. We saw that last night, even with his goal against Pittsburgh Penguins with 10 seconds left to win them the game. Watch that live, by the way, because I had a few players in that game in fantasy, so I was glued to it. But he's arrived points-wise. He is wearing an A on his sweater this season, so it seems like management does trust that he has those leadership capabilities. He's captained Canada at every level that he's played at, the U17s, U18s, and at the World Juniors, most notably. He's still on his entry-level deal, so this might be the only factor working against him becoming captain of this team. It might just make more sense to wait until he's signed long-term. He has this year that he's currently playing in and next year still on his entry-level contract. But for all those reasons, man, I think that he is inevitably going to be the A captain of this team. Whether it's the next remains to be seen, because I think a good stopgap could be a player like Cam Fowler. But I pick Mason McTavish to be the next captain. What do you think about that?
Yeah, 100%. He's the guy who I had to wear the C next for the Anaheim Ducks. Right from his draft year, he looked like an NHL ready player, and you can say that about a lot of guys, but I just think his character is really good. The way that he's performed in that leadership position with Team Canada at the World Juniors and at other tournaments, and the fact that he's only in his second season and he's wearing an A already, it really shows what Pat Verbeek and Greg Cronin, it really shows what they think of him, and I think it makes so much sense to have this guy be the next captain of the Ducks for sure.
Well, so what do you think about the longest serving alternate captain on this team, Cam Fowler? I think that was he is a big he is definitely in the conversation to become the next captain. What do you think about if that was the choice?
Yeah, well, and I mean, we've seen this before. Like you look at Buffalo, right? I mean, they went with Kyle Oposo, one of the longest serving Sabres, and instead of a guy like Rasmus Dahlin or Alex Tuck, who is still new to the Sabres, I guess new/old, but Fowler would make a lot of sense as well because he is a big veteran presence in a very young locker room. I could get that, but it's not a guarantee that he's going to finish his career as an Anaheim Duck either. I think that Anaheim has had a nice start to the season. I think they're just over 500 with that win over Pittsburgh, so it's a good start for them. But who knows? I mean, there may be some trade interest around Fowler at the deadline, and I certainly think there would be interest, but he may not be in Anaheim for much longer. We'll see what happens there. Whereas McTavish, I mean, they're going to lock this guy up for as long as they can, as soon as they can, and I think that it's good to go with someone as your captain that's a part of that young talented core in Anaheim. But I could totally see Fowler being the next guy for sure. Yeah,
you hope they lock up McTavish. I mean, it wasn't exactly easy with Trevor Zegras, and he hasn't exactly started the season very well. I'm actually more disappointed than you would think about that because I made a bet with a buddy that he would get over 75 points, and it's seeming less and less likely that that's going to be the case. But I brought up Fowler because, I mentioned him as maybe a stopgap before you think Mason McTavish is ready. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I compare Fowler to Morgan Riley, actually, in Toronto, a guy who has been there the longest out of their current group, but, doesn't necessarily need a C on his sweater to be a leader on the team. That's kind of where I peg Fowler. I feel like he may be more vocal than some of the younger players, and maybe that's enough, and maybe he's content with an A. So there's always that to consider as well. But I thought that was a decent comparison between the two.
Yeah, absolutely. I think either Fowler or McTavish would be great choices for the next captain for the Anaheim Ducks. Let's move on to our next team, and that is the Arizona Coyotes, looking to take a step forward this season, of course. And, they pounded the snot out of the Blackhawks the other night, an 8-1 victory. Wow. Michael Carcone with a 4-point performance. Something really cool from that game as well. Jack McBain had a Gordie Howe hat trick in that game, and the last time that two teammates, I think the other was Liam O'Brien, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. What's really cool about that, I heard this on Jeff Merrick's radio show earlier today. The last time that two teammates got Gordie Howe hat tricks in the same game, I forget the other player, but one of the guys was Jack McBain's dad all those years ago. And now cool. his son did it the other night. So I thought that was pretty cool, just as a little side note.
Well, speaking of Gordie Howe hat tricks, I mean, it's named after Gordie Howe, Mr. Hockey, but do you know who actually leads the NHL in Gordie Howe hat tricks?
Is it Brady Tkachuk?
It's Brendan Shanahan.
Brendan Shanahan, wow.
So there you go. I heard that on a podcast ages ago, and it just came to my mind. So if someone has passed Brendan Shanahan by now, don't kill me in the comments. But I'm pretty sure that's the case. I heard it on a podcast a while ago. So there you go.
Yeah, and hey, I know I guessed Brady Tkachuk, and that's certainly a new age guess, but I wouldn't be surprised if him or Matthew ends up with that with the most at the end of the day. But yeah, talking about Arizona and their next captain, this is kind of an interesting one as well. I think you could make a case for one or two guys. So what do you think?
So my pick was actually the player who is probably expected to score the most on the team. But when the team put up 8 goals the other night, he didn't have a single point, and that's Clayton Keller. I just thought that was kind of interesting because I'm playing against a team this week in our fantasy league who has Clayton Keller. So he could have won the week in one night if Keller went off, but it seemed like just everyone else went off, including, Carcone and McBain, and Alex Kerfoot, I think, had 3 assists. So, I was kind of lucky that Keller didn't. But yeah, I feel like this is a pick where, you want to, first of all, Keller is signed through 2028, I believe. Yeah, signed through 2027-28 season. Like I said, he's the best player on the team. He's a superstar. And not only is he signed for the longest on this team, he's also been there the longest. I don't know if he's the most tenured player on the team.
Yeah, he's close. Like, he's right behind Lawson Krause.
Okay, well, Krause, again, another guy. But, I mean, I think one is more valuable to the team than the other, and they've both been there for a long time. So, I don't know. I would reward Clayton Keller for his loyalty to Arizona, and I think he's a fan favorite, too, for all the reasons I mentioned. So, I would give it to Clayton Keller, though there could be another possible option or options out there. So who did you pick?
Well, I mean, I've got Keller as well. I think it's the obvious choice. You look at the breakout season that he had last year, and he has all of a sudden put himself in the conversation of being one of the greatest Coyotes of all time, and certainly has potential to do that or be the greatest Coyote at the end of the day when it's all said and done. And so he's a leader in that locker room with that young core, with Schmaltz and Krause and you add Logan Cooley into that mix and Dylan Guenther eventually and guys like that. But he is the heartbeat of that team, certainly offensively. He makes them go, and I just like some of the things that he said. I think he's a very laid back guy. I don't think very much bothers him, and he has come out and said that he's a pretty loyal guy, and he's loyal to the Coyotes, and he likes the direction that they're going in. And so I think it's the most logical move to make him the next captain of the Coyotes.
Mm-hmm. Well, whoever is the next captain will be only one captain removed from the greatest Arizona Coyote, or Phoenix Coyote, that is, of all time, in Shane Doan, because there's only been one captain since Shane Doan, and his legacy and everything he built there lives on to this day, and the players still have so much respect for him. Everyone from Arizona and in that area does. So whoever it is will only be one captain removed. OEL was the other one, their last captain in 2020-21, who is off to a decent start in Florida, by the way. Looks pretty good, quarterbacking the power play there. But I just thought Keller made sense. The only way I could see him not getting the captaincy is if they want to wait for Logan Cooley, or if they decide that Lawson Krause is, because he signed a deal relatively recently too. If they decide that Lawson Krause is the guy because he plays with a bit of snarl and maybe he's more vocal in the room. So I could see any of those players getting named captain. I'm kind of surprised that they didn't come into this season with a captain, to be honest, though, because I feel like, it's kind of time. It's been a couple seasons now. OEL is gone. I don't know. I feel like they have some players who have been there for a while, some players who are locked up for a while. I don't know what the weight is now. They're competing now in their division. So
no, I know what you're saying, man. I kind of thought the same thing too. Like they, with them being competitive and wanting to take a step forward and be playing meaningful games down the stretch, and the early returns from the Coyotes look pretty good. It looks like they've got a real shot to be able to do that. But But, I mean, maybe one more year, and then next year when, they're expected to be pushing for a playoff spot, maybe that's when you name a captain, but shouldn't be too much longer, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, it's very rare, like, that a team ever names a captain mid-season. I don't know if that's been done recently at all. I can't remember a time, so I would assume next year they will have a captain. But then again, who knows? Maybe they want to wait on Cooley. The argument against that is, well, they have some pretty good other players there as well who are still young, and it doesn't seem like they're waiting on them. So I don't know. I think Keller makes the most sense.
He does.
We'll see what happens next year.
Yeah, for sure.
Sports betting has rapidly risen in popularity, and I want to connect you all with an opportunity to get started or to get ahead. Having multiple sportsbook accounts is the most simple way to maximize your profits, and there's never been a better time to sign up. So when you visit our page at signupexpert.com/boysinthebooth, you'll be connected to all the sportsbooks in your region, along with a review of each platform and its unique benefits. All of these sportsbooks have valuable sign-up offers for new users, and when you register through the link, you will automatically receive the top offer at each one. When you use multiple sportsbooks, you ensure that you can always access the best available odds, which is key to successful sports betting. So if you want to take advantage of these benefits and support our brand in the meantime, please consider signing up for your next sportsbook at signupexpert.com/boysinthebooth. This podcast is sponsored by Liquid IV. Whether you're staying active or nursing a hangover, Liquid IV has you covered. Just one stick of Liquid IV in 16 ounces of water hydrates faster and more efficiently than water alone, and you can get 20% off when you go to liquidiv.com and use the code boys_in_the_booth at checkout. That's 20% off anything in the store when you use the code boys_in_the_booth at checkout. This podcast is sponsored by the best ticket app out there, SeatGeek. SeatGeek takes the confusion out of buying tickets, making it quick and easy to get the best deals on tickets to your favorite sporting events. Plus, Boys in the Booth listeners get $20 off their first ticket purchase on SeatGeek using the promo code BOYSINTHEBOOth in all caps. So click the link in the description down below to download the app, and remember to get your discounted tickets using the code BOYSINTHEBOOth in all caps. Get great seats for a fraction of the cost with SeatGeek.
All right, man, let's move on to another team in that Central Division. That, of course, is the Chicago Blackhawks. And, for them, it's been kind of a scorched earth rebuild. And very quickly, they've been able to, accumulate a lot of draft picks and assets and build up that prospect pool again. Obviously, it's going to be a tough couple of years here for the Blackhawks, but I don't know about you, man, but I'm looking at one guy in particular as being the next captain of this team and becoming the next captain in the NHL at a very young age. Why
don't you share first then before I chime in?
Sure. So obviously it's Connor Bedard. I mean, taking the low hanging fruit here. I just look at you look at guys like Sidney Crosby and Connor McDavid, Gabriel Landeskog, Jonathan Toews. Those only four guys that come to mind as guys who became captains really, really young. And obviously McDavid became captain of the Oilers when he was 19. I could certainly see that with Connor Bedard in Chicago. I think it makes so much sense. His character and just his personality and his drive. It's like he's coming in and he's a 25-year-old. Just so impressed with that. We all heard and saw the quote after the gold medal game at the World Juniors that, he's being asked about his personal tournament success. And he says, I don't want to talk about that right now. I want to talk about this team, my teammates, and how we did this together and all of that. And that right there just shows that he cares about more than himself. He's going to do whatever it takes to help his team win. And it would just look so good, like on the Blackhawks for this guy, your franchise cornerstone, to be wearing the C. And I think that that's going to happen eventually. So yeah, I'm taking Connor Bedard.
Yeah, I don't disagree with any of the points you just made, and I do think it will happen eventually. I wanted you to go first because I had a different player in mind, a player who did say to the media that he would embrace the role of captain of the Blackhawks, if it didn't go to Connor Bedard, and that was Seth Jones.
Yeah.
Seth Jones, I think, would make a perfect captain for this team in the interim as a stopgap before Connor Bedard eventually does take over as the captain. That is, if he stays in Chicago. We have no reason to believe that he wouldn't stay in Chicago. That's just not a foregone conclusion that he will. So I think it would be nice to have Seth Jones as a stopgap. He's currently an alternate captain. He's tied for the fourth highest paid defenseman in the NHL right now, making $9.5 million. And I just think that, even though that contract is tough, it's pretty tough as a comparable when you look around the league and see the other defensemen making that much money, most notably Cale Makar at $9 million, as opposed to Seth Jones $9.5. It doesn't make it look good. But with that being said, he's still a pretty good defenseman. He just gets overhated because he's overpaid. And I think that's unfair. And I think that could shake a player's confidence. If the Chicago Blackhawks are going to be good in the next 3 years, Seth Jones, because he's locked up, is going to be a part of it, no matter what. And if you want Seth Jones at his best, he has to be at his most confident. And I think giving him the captaincy to act as a stopgap before Connor Bedard makes the most sense and is the best way to achieve that goal of Seth Jones being a really good defenseman. So I thought it could be interesting. Like I said, he did mention that he would embrace the role. Some other players in the media, if they were asked a similar question, might say, that's not up for me to decide, or, wouldn't really give away their feelings. But it seems like Seth Jones has always wanted to be a captain of a team, and he's learned from some pretty good ones. So I think it could make sense, not as a long-term solution, but as a short-term one.
Yeah, you're going with the stopgap option again, and I like it. Obviously he had that quote in the off season, and one of many defensemen that Darnell Nurse is another one that comes to mind. That these guys aren't bad defensemen, the Joneses and the Nurses of the world. It's just their contracts that are attached to them that that really change the perception around them. But he's a big part of this team. He's asked to do a ton, obviously, because the Blackhawks are rebuilding. And I've heard Luke Richardson say many times just how much of a help Jones and Connor Murphy, another veteran defenseman, how great those guys have been. To the team.
Connor Murphy is actually their longest serving alternate captain.
Yeah.
By the way.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that could certainly be another stopgap option as well. I thought about Nick Foligno too. Obviously he's only on a 1-year deal here, and I don't know if he'd be sticking around after this season, but Bedard has certainly been very complimentary of him and helping him out. But Jones is locked in for a long time. He's a veteran. He's seen a lot in this league already. This is his third organization in his career, and I could see that for sure as a stopgap.
Yeah, and the reason I even brought it up, aside from his comments, is that I think it would be a perfect opportunity for Connor Bedard to develop and mature without an added pressure of captaining a team. So that was sort of the mentality when thinking of a stopgap option. And I just thought Seth Jones made the most sense. Because, if you think back to his career, he's learned under some pretty good captains. Jonathan Taves, most recently, last year in Chicago, who, by the way, one of the best captains, in Blackhawks history, in NHL history.
Yes.
Three Stanley Cups, captain serious, captain at every level, basically, that he's played at. So Absolutely. Incredible captain there. Also played under Nick Foligno in Columbus when he was the captain. So, those are, and now they're reunited in Chicago. So some pretty big names there. And Seth Jones to me just made a lot of sense.
No, I could totally see that for sure. All right, we've got 2 teams left here, Melbs, and we'll go to the Metro Division now. The Philadelphia Flyers surprisingly don't have a captain, and I kind of forgot that it wasn't this player who I have in mind for this role with this team. Obviously, they're in a rebuild. They've had a good start to the season here. Man, these guys work under John Tortorella. I mean, there's no question about it. They are going to be a handful for teams every single night. I think as the season goes on, they're not gonna win a ton of games, and will eventually come down to earth a little bit here, which they already have. But man, the Flyers play hard. They've got a lot of good character guys on that team, but there's one guy in particular for me, and so but first we'll go to you and get your thoughts.
Yeah, well, I'm pretty sure we're talking about the same player. It's pretty much a foregone conclusion that this player will be the next captain of this team, and I'm kind of like you. I was sort of surprised that he isn't the captain on the ice right now.
Yeah. And
that's Sean Couturier.
Yeah.
It just makes so much sense for him to be the captain. He served as an alternate for 4 straight seasons under Claude Giroux, who last captained the team in 21-22. Surprisingly, at least from what Elite Prospect says, he's not currently wearing an A. I don't know if that's true or if that's just an oversight by Elite Prospects, but I mean, it says he's not wearing an A right now on the team. It says the only player wearing an A is Scott Lawton. So I feel like there's something weird going on there. I feel like he might still be wearing an A. If you're a Flyers fan, let me know if that's the case, if Scott Lawton is the only player wearing an alternate captain on his chest. But Sean Couturier makes the most sense. He's one of the longest tenured players on this team, if not the longest tenured. He has been incredible to start this season after coming back from crazy surgeries and a surgery that we weren't exactly sure what his NHL future was going to look like. And now it looks like he hasn't skipped a beat. And he's also signed through 2030. So I don't know why he doesn't have the C on his jersey yet. You have to think it will be there next year, and maybe he doesn't just because they weren't entirely sure how he was going to play or how long he was going to play for. But assuming he's healthy going forward, I think it's an absolute no-brainer that Sean Couturier is the next captain of the Philadelphia Flyers.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that one thing to keep in mind as well is that this is really the first look that John Tortorella gets to have at Sean Couturier. So maybe, after some time goes by here and he's able to stay healthy and Tortsy can see what he contributes to the locker room and all that firsthand, that maybe we do finally see that decision, before next season or something. But yeah, I mean, this is a no-brainer. Clearly, this team just hasn't been the same without him, and he's given them a lot of juice to start the season, and they play really hard. And I mean, but before his career-threatening injury, I mean, we were talking about Sean Couturier as a Selke finalist every year, and one of the best two-way forwards in the game. And so it's great to see him back. I think it just shows his character, his perseverance to come back and try to play out some of that long-term contract that he signed with Philly. And he's been there for a while, obviously. And yeah, I think it'd be a no-brainer for him to have the C. And I'm surprised it hasn't happened already.
Mm-hmm. And they do have some good core members of their leadership group there. A guy like Scott Lawton comes to mind. Travis Konechny has been there a long time, and he's an integral piece to their team. I mean, there might be a decision to be made there if they want to eventually sell, but as of right now, he's a key piece to their team.
Yeah.
Cam Atkinson, another player.
Yeah.
And they have some good young players coming up too, so maybe that's where the decision is heading, but I just really doubt that they're going to immediately hand the captaincy to a player like Bobby Brink, who looks good, by the way, so far to start the season, or a player like Matvei Michkov, who will be in North America in a couple of years. So I just think Couturier is the obvious pick, and it will probably be at the start of next season.
Yeah, I could see that for sure. That would make the most sense. All right, final team with a captain vacancy, and that is the Seattle Kraken, who have had a bit of an up and down start to the season. They took a big step forward last year, and it's an interesting mix of players, obviously being an expansion team, but they're a lot of fun to watch. And I've got one player in particular, a guy they drafted, is my pick, but we'll go to you first with our last team here, Seattle.
Okay, so before we get to my pick, I wanted to say that obviously the last captain of this team was Mark Giordano in 21-22. I always thought that was such a weird thing for them to do, to take a captain of another team and take him in the expansion draft and make him your captain, and then trade him just a few months later to another team. It didn't make any sense to me why they even named a captain in the first place in their inaugural season. You know, Vegas didn't, and they had a few guys who were acting as captains. You know, they had a lot of experienced leaders in the room, but they didn't have a player with the C on his chest. And I always just thought it was so weird that they gave it to Mark Giordano and then traded him. Since then, though, Eberle, Gord, Larson, and Schwartz have all worn the A for this team. Even from their inaugural season, those 4 players have worn the A. No one else has worn it in a regular season game, that is. And those are the players that comprise their leadership group right now, in the absence of Mark Giordano. I think if they wanted to have a captain, it would be one of those guys already. It just doesn't seem like they're ready to name a captain yet. And I think, you know, if my logic is correct here, that means they're waiting for another player who they drafted to come up and seize the job, the role of captain on this team. I think that can be either Matty Beniers or Shane Wright. But if I had to pick, I'm leaning towards Shane Wright. I'm saying that I think they're going to wait in a few years, name Shane Wright captain. It sounds weird saying it right now because Matty Beniers is the more established player. And then, of course, those 4 alternate captains who I named are more established players, are part of their current leadership role, or leadership group, rather. But I think Shane Wright, even though it sounds weird now, would make a perfect captain for this team. He has all the abilities and qualities that you want in a leader of an NHL team. And I feel like his reputation got a bit tarnished after being drafted 4th overall instead of 1st overall. And I feel like that whole scenario was blown out of proportion. Don't forget, Shane Wright was an alternate captain of the Kingston Frontenacs at 15 years old.
It's true.
After receiving exceptional status to the league. And then the following season, mind you, there was a 1-year gap in between because of COVID, and they didn't play a full season. But the very next year that they played, he was the captain of the team. He has played internationally and has worn letters there. He has all of the leadership qualities you expect out of a good young player. And I just think if Seattle wants to go this route and wait on a player that they've drafted, Shane Wright, to me, would make the most sense. Despite the fact that they already have, you know, a good leadership group and another young player in Matty Beniers, who I think could also make a good captain. But to me, I'm just going with my gut and leaning Shane Wright, but not anytime soon. He's not even in the NHL yet. I think they're content to have those 4 players in their leadership group for now, and maybe even for the next couple years. And then eventually the second captain named of the Seattle Kraken could very well be Shane Wright. What do you think on that? You seem pretty surprised that I went with Wright.
Yeah, no, I kind of was surprised, but I mean, I could see it. Like, you know, the common theme with a lot of these guys around the league that get named captains, they're high picks, right? And certainly, I think the draft was a big learning curve for him, falling to 4th overall, and we all saw some of the clips. You know, he staring down Montreal, and he thought for sure he was going to Arizona at number 3 in that draft and whatever. But time goes on, and I think that he's going to learn from that and be a better player and a better person because of it. And Alan Atmansky, our good buddy there who covers the Kingston Frontenacs, he would love the fact that you said that he became an assistant with them at the age of 15. Look, I think one day he will be a part of the leadership core with this team and be a big part of the Seattle Kraken when they're ready to contend for a championship. But I just have to go with Matty Beniers. I really like this player. He's established already, Calder Trophy finalist last season. And to me, Matty Beniers is just, man, his personality and just the way he is, it's infectious. Like, that guy is so full of energy all the time. He's always got a smile on his face, and I just think is a really positive guy. Whereas I think, at least for right now, and it's understandable because Shane Wright is still a young guy as well, but I just think that he lets things bother him a little too much. As of right now, that's something that he'll have to work through, and that's just an opinion of my own. But I would go with the guy who's established right now, who's going to be a cornerstone piece for your team for years to come, we think, in Matty Beniers.
And listen, that's a fair pick. I had a feeling you were going to go with Matty Beniers, because it really does seem like they're waiting for one of the young players that they've drafted to sort of come up and seize the position. And you know what? For Shane Wright, I'm not willing to bet on it because it is the more unlikely scenario. I just think it would make a lot of sense. But at the end of the day, it might come down simply to timing. And if Beniers is ready sooner to take on the role than Shane Wright, whether that's, just because he's been in the league for longer or, he's producing more already, both of those are true. Then so be it, and it comes down to timing, and he's named captain. But I just see a world, if everything goes well development wise for Shane Wright, that he could be a captain of this team, and so that's why I picked him. But both are I think good options. And you know what, the 4 players who are currently wearing A's, any of those guys could be good options too. Another player, one of their best players on their team, Jared McCann, that could be an option as well if they wanted to go that route. So
definitely,
it all sort of depends which direction they want to go. It is odd, going back to the Giordano thing, that they ever even named a captain. Maybe they did it so that the very first one, wouldn't feel like such pressure years down the road if they gave it to a young player like Beniers or Wright. But I mean, for those reasons, one of those 2 young guys is going to make a great captain on that team.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I thought it was weird that they named Gio captain, but also, I mean, it is Mark Giordano, and he had been a captain for a long time in Calgary before that. But it was just weird that not long after he was shipped off at the deadline to Toronto. So anyway, well, there we go. That wraps up this episode, and the 5 NHL teams without captains. You can let us know what you think of our picks in the comment section on Instagram, and feel free to give an episode feel free to give this episode a listen. So thanks so much for listening to episode 187. We'll be back with you next week, and happy Halloween to everybody out there.
This has been another episode of Boys in the Booth with Harper Cody, Chad Melbourne, and Casey Abrams. Connect with the Boys in the Booth on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Boys in the Booth. Visit boysinthebooth.com for show details. And don't forget, you can become a patron of the podcast for just $1 a month at patreon.com/boysinthebooth.